I'm not sure we nailed season 2 in the previous episode. Here's what I wanted. I wanted 4 things from season 2, aside from more explosions. I did want more explosions, but the 4 main things I wanted from season 2 were better sound quality, better guests, more randomness, and a new cover image.
Okay.
And we got 2 of those things.
What are you talking about?
We got 2 of those things. We got better guests, which we haven't announced yet, but it's exciting what's coming up. And we got our new cover image.
Did we?
Well, by the time this comes out, it will be finalized, yeah.
Okay.
We're in the process of doing a new cover image.
That is true.
But I think there needs to be more randomness in this show.
Okay.
I don't have a plan for how to enact that. This is my wish list
Right.
for the show. Anyhow, throw the theme song in here.
You are aleatoric reality.
So what do you think of that new theme song?
Well, I think it's a little off time.
That's from the MIDI file. And I'll tell you what it is. It's the attack of the double bass.
Oh, is that what it is?
Right. But I think you're right that recording that I made, that impromptu ad hoc piece of what you just heard, listeners, is not ideal. It does not fit into my stated wish for higher standards in this season. So that's why I propose that once we get to 10 Patreon subscribers, this is a challenge for you listeners, once we get to 10 Patreon subscribers, I will commission the theme song to be recorded by an actual live quartet. And by quartet, I mean if I roll a 1, it's a string quartet. If I roll a 2, it's a brass quartet. If I roll a 3, it's a woodwind quartet. 4 will be barbershop quartet. 5 would be a heavy metal bass quartet. And 6 would be the original instrumentation we rolled, piano, flute, oboe, and double bass. So get on it, listeners. Once we get 10 Patreon subscribers, we'll get that theme song recorded up in a professional-sounding way.
But the thing that's interesting to me is it's almost as if the part that you added to it collides with it. Like, it's really weird. And I was thinking about it, and I think part of it might be that with the original MIDI file, I started off with everything starting on the same beat, but then I brought in intervals, right? So it comes in 1, 2, 3, 4. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I did that. I don't think that's in time.
Possibly. I attempted my best to match the time that was existing in the MIDI file, and what you heard in this show is the best that I could do. Not that I'm a virtuoso or anything, but I have a decent rhythm, and it was tricky. I fudged it as best as I could.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea.
We do need to re-record it. This is what we have for now.
Yeah.
And if you know what? If you want to do your own thing, we could throw that in next time. I don't care.
Oh, for me or the listeners?
Do your own
the
thing.
Listeners.
We issued a challenge last season for listeners to submit theirs, and no one has done that yet, but you still could. Mm-hmm. You still could, listeners. You could make your version of our theme song. Don't even have to follow, use those notes as the hook or whatever, but do what you want with it.
Or roll your own.
We'll play it on the show.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Get jiggy. That's the more getting I'm adding that to my wish list. More getting jiggy in season 2.
Yeah.
All right, what do we got now? Got any news?
Well, I started 3D printing because of Trump, which was kind of a weird thing.
You started yes, okay. Tell the listeners I figured it out. But tell the listeners why you started 3D printing because of Trump.
When I started doing the dice making, I originally was buying my 3D prints from China because for 2 reasons. One, I didn't want to start 2 complex hobbies that I knew nothing about at the same time, because that's just stupid. That's just asking to fail.
Right.
Especially since dice making is kind of
anybody out there who started 2 new complex hobbies at the same time, you just called them stupid. So apologies to you, listener.
I didn't say they were stupid.
You said anyone who starts 2 complex hobbies at the same time is stupid.
Okay.
So
I thought it would be stupid for me to start 2 hobbies at the same time.
I'm just giving you a hard time for no reason.
No, I get it. So anyway, and then when I started looking at this tariff stuff, I'm like, oh, so now I'm going to be double for everything I've been ordering from China.
Yeah.
And also, if I don't act now, the prices of 3D printers are going to go up.
True that.
So I had this realization because I read this article that was talking about how the two kind of niche markets that are going to be impacted the most by this whole plan are video game console systems and 3D laser printers, because they're entire. There's no American manufacturers. There's not even assembled. All the parts are made in, it's 100% China, which is, it's fine with me, but anyway. So
because of the tariffs.
Yeah. So, but it's been fun, and I made some new dice and learning all about support systems. Not emotional ones, more
for the structure of the thing you're 3D printing as you're printing it, because
But resin printing's awesome because it's upside down and weird. So anyway, that's been fun. So that's kind of my news.
Yeah, I thought you were going to talk about your scheme to worship Fortuna 24 hours a day.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, I forgot. We haven't done that yet.
I don't think you've talked about that yet.
No. So, friend of mine, very into Bitcoin and everything. I've never really been into it, but he told me about these bit axes. They're these little devices. They're about $150, and all they do is try to farm Bitcoin all day long on the lottery system.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the lottery system.
So they're not powerful enough to actually mine Bitcoin successfully and make any money. If I was to employ them in that, I would make 5 cents a day, and it would take 25 years for them to pay me.
Yeah,
because of the minimums, right? So
because the complexity of the calculations, when Bitcoin first came out, you could do it pretty easily because very few people were doing it. But as time goes on and the blockchain gets longer, it requires much more complexity of calculations, which is why people have to get people started using video cards, and now there's hardware that's only made to mine Bitcoin because of how complicated it's gotten.
Exactly. But so anyway, it's a small little guy that just sits over there. It's mostly fan. And and then it just sits there and tries to guess the final sequence in a Bitcoin.
Right, rather than calculating it, it just tries to guess,
yes.
Which is why they call it the lottery method, right?
Exactly. But the first thing that popped in my head was, oh, this is perfect. Now I can passively worship Fortuna all the time because I'm constantly playing the lottery.
Yeah.
So I got really into tinkering with them and the fun, because there's tons of ways to overclock
right,
them.
Right, this is Damon. He's not just going to buy a device and let it sit in the corner. He's gonna mess with it and modify it. So how did you do that?
So now there's two of them. First of all, because they went on sale for $100, and so I had to buy a second one. But then you mess with the heat sinks, and now that I've got the 3D printer, I can 3D print out adapters for both the heatsink to fit on the board and also for the fans. So I have on the one, I have a 60 millimeter fan mounted to a 40 millimeter heatsink with an adapter, a vortex adapter, right? So it's a good time.
So you're I can overclock this more if I have a bigger fan, but a bigger fan won't fit on here. So, hey, I'll just make a thing that will adapt it so it fits.
Right. Exactly. And so, I've been having fun tinkering with those. And now I've abandoned the power supplies that came with them and gone to a scientific power supply. So I can pull 300 watts if I need to instead of the 30 watts I had available.
All for, what did you get your chances down to? Well, what was it when you started?
When I started...
out of the box, what was your chances of getting a Bitcoin?
I wrote it down. I have to find it. We will definitely edit this part out.
We can edit out this dead time, sure.
Okay, so, all right. So this is what I wrote the day I bought it in our show notes, because I was definitely going to bring this forth. So the Bitcoin harvesting, the odds of hitting a Bitcoin block are 1 in 5,285,880 per day.
So low chance of hitting a Bitcoin.
And that would be, you would get a minimum of 3.125 Bitcoin, plus you also get workers, I forget what they call it. But that's, at the time, it's actually gone up by about 20% now, was $239,882.69.
Wow.
Compared to the Michigan lottery, which at the time of this writing, I don't know what it is now, the odds of winning the Michigan lottery were 1 in 5,245,786. and the cash prize was $143,551.
So about the same chances, but a better take.
Right. So now...
But what did you get your chances down to by all this overclocking?
Let's see. That's not current. Well, I got the yearly chance down to 1 in 4,817.
That's a huge difference.
Well, that was the daily one that I said before.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
So the daily chance is now... this is not accurate. But I think I dropped it.
Wasn't it something like one in 15,000 or something per year when you first started?
Yes. Yeah.
And now it's down to 1 in 4,000 something?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've like...
From overclocking.
Yeah, way increased your chances of hitting.
They're supposed to push out a maximum of 1.2 terahashes. Mm-hmm. And I've got both of mine over 2 most of the time. So
nice.
I'm pushing almost 4
Crazy.
pretty consistently on average when they're working right.
Hail Fortuna.
So, yeah, I forgot about that. I'm glad you reminded me.
Yeah. Well, that ties right into a little bit of news that I had, which is kind of old at this point because it happened in January. But the Mega Millions lottery, which is a multi-state lottery, they raised their price from $2 a ticket to $5 a ticket.
Oh, wow.
And they say they've retooled the game a little bit, which they have. There used to be a megaplier. Like, in addition to picking the winning numbers, they also pick what they call the megaplier, which is another random thing, which is either 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, or whatever. But you only got the multiplier if you paid an extra $1 to play megaplier. And now megaplier is included for every ticket, which that still makes a $3 ticket that they're selling for $5. Mm-hmm. But they claim there's all these differences that is going to make better chance. They're trying to imply that it's a better chance of winning. I think what really happened was somebody did the math of if we raise the price, how many people are going to quit playing?
Right.
How much will we still make? And $5 was probably the sweet spot for a bunch of people will quit, but enough people will keep paying the $5 that will end up making more money. I think that's probably what happened. But the Mega Millions itself has been around since I think 1996. It started with like a consortium of 5 states who were like, hey, we can make more money if we pool all of our lottery players together and have like a mega prize. And there are a couple of them now, like Powerball is that way too, that multiple states are involved in this scam, which it was a scam when racketeers did it in the 40s.
Oh, absolutely. That's why they took it
and
over.
then they took it over. They were like, let's make it legit so that the gangsters will stop doing it. And then...
So I just did some quick math.
Yeah?
And for the amount that I spent on these guys, I could get about 50 to 60 of those lottery tickets. Mm-hmm. That's it.
But that would only last you 50 or 60 days. Well, no, because they don't draw the Mega Millions every day. It's twice a week.
Yeah. So that would
get you half a year, 6 months or so.
Yeah.
But this way, you provided the devices don't burn out, you can play virtually forever,
constantly,
all the time.
I mean, when you play the lotto, did you get a graph?
You don't get a graph. See, we should take a picture of that or take a screenshot to post, because Damon has all these fancy graphs that shows him that his lottery is doing something. Your ticket doesn't have a graph on it if you buy a lottery ticket. Mm-mm. No, this is far superior.
My ticket is pulling 42.5 watts.
All right. It's enough technical mumbo jumbo.
These are the weird things I like, though.
Well, that's why you do it.
Yeah,
because you want to get into the weeds on all the technical details.
Yeah, I can't help it.
That's fun.
Scratches that itch.
Cool. Well, let's get to our topic. Last time we rolled for a topic and determined that we were going to do randomness in comedy.
So I think when I was researching this, I think you got in my head. Because I started researching it and I'm like, wait a second. All of the elements of randomness in comedy that I was going to utilize when I was thinking of this topic are not random to the comedian. Mm-hmm. They're only random to, the entertainee, I guess.
Well, that's an insight. And actually, the first thing I wrote down on my notes was humor is unexpected.
Yes.
That's kind of the point of comedy, is that they do the setup and then the punchline is a different way of thinking about it that you weren't set up to think, and the juxtaposition of your expectation and what actually happens is what creates the humor.
Correct.
So there's an element of it has to be unexpected or it wouldn't be funny, but you're right that that's not random for the comic.
Right.
For the person doing the comedy.
So now we have a third type or at least a second type of faux randomness, right? So we've got one debate about whether improvisational like music is randomness, and now I put forth the question that if the person administrating the randomness is not necessarily wholly a random source, I think that's kind of okay too.
What do you mean by okay?
So like, and I read an article that was talking about the connections between comedy and art. So like surrealism, absurdism, Dada, all those different kinds of modern art are kind of the version of comedy for a painter.
Right. Well, what that put in mind for me when you said that is stuff like absurdism and surrealism has the unexpected juxtapositions, but not in a way that's necessarily funny. It's like interesting, thought-provoking, weird. It attracts your attention, but it doesn't necessarily make you laugh. And maybe like the randomness of comedy, it would be a subset of that wider, like the unexpected in any art form.
I mean, how random is it to pay for dinner for 8 people by signing the tablecloth?
I don't think that's random at all.
It's
Salvador Dali did that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure the first time, though, nobody said, hey, if you'd like to eat here, if you sign our tablecloth at the end of the meal, dinner's on us. No, he just put that forth.
Well, Picasso used to do that too. Picasso would pay his bar tab by just like, once he was famous, he would just do a sketch on a napkin, and the sketch on the napkin was worth like way, way more than his bar tab.
Right.
Because somebody could sell that, like, this is a Picasso sketch, and they could, auction it off for thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Even if it was just a little crappy doodle on a napkin. And then there's the guy, Boggs. You ever heard of Boggs?
The gas station?
No, there was this artist named Boggs. I knew of his activity in the 90s. He was living in Pittsburgh. It's not where he was from. I don't know where he's from. But he was living in Pittsburgh in the 90s, and I knew him through some friends of friends. And he was known for his drawings of U.S. currency, and he was like one of those guys who like had a huge FBI file. FBI agents were like following him, and they were like trying to accuse him of counterfeiting. And he's like, there's no like his a lot of his bills were like big paintings, like 4 feet wide, 2 feet high, and he's like, it's not counterfeiting because no one could honestly believe that this is $1.
Right.
This is a painting. But he would because of his notoriety, if he would just like do a sketch of a bill, $100 bill on a sketch pad or something and hand it to somebody, they could then sell that. And there were local businesses that would like start accepting his sketches, even not from him. Somebody else could give you a Boggs sketch. And because of his notoriety, it kind of like became this alternative currency, which he got a lot of government heat for that. But that's not at all randomness.
Well,
just the Dali writing on the tablecloth reminded me of it.
But then the next one I thought of was Banksy's shredding. So you remember he did that piece that as soon as
where
it
he
sold,
had a shredder built into the frame.
Yeah, so there were razor blades. There were X-Acto blade razor blades tied at the bottom, and as soon as he remotely did a signal, and it was totally. By looking at it, you didn't expect that to be a deception.
No one knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Someone like agreed at an auction to pay a very large price for a Banksy piece, and as soon as the sale was like agreed, he hit the remote and the whole thing like self-shredded.
But they stopped it like with a quarter left.
Yeah. Brilliant.
So
artistically, that was a brilliant like situationist or happening kind of thing.
But that's comedy.
Is it comedy?
It's comedy.
I mean, I guess you could because
from the artist's perspective,
it was definitely not comedy to the person who won the auction.
Right.
Although in the end,
it was worth more.
It was such world news that thing is probably now worth more than it would have been if the shredder hadn't been there in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because it was a pretty mediocre piece of his.
Yeah.
And it was small. And I think that was why it sold for so much. Because like, I can actually have this in my house. Right?
And then he shredded it.
I mean, first of all, that's just beautiful. This is beautiful. But no, I started thinking about it, and like, especially if you think of like, I mean, I'm not an art historian by any measure, but all of the surrealist movements kind of stemmed from guys who were just fucking sick of the Renaissance masters. So in a way, from a certain perspective, as Obi-Wan would say, they were turning art into comedy because they loved art so much that they were rebelling against it. And I'm sure that I mean, I don't know. You never know what's inside the head of a lot of these guys, you know, because they'd never show their hand.
Right, but when you see like Marcel Duchamp just taking a urinal and putting it on a pedestal in an art gallery, there's no conception that he thinks he's done like
right,
classically speaking, done a work of art. It's a different. It's more like a prank,
right?
Like an artistic prank.
And like then I thought of the Vonnegut artist, I can't remember, but in his books that just did the plain house paint on a canvas, these huge pieces with reflective tape that represented the souls of the people in the picture. Mm-hmm. And that was it. It was selling for millions and millions of dollars, which then, you know, I don't know. It just, in my head, these things all kind of collided, and it gave me a very interesting perspective to think that, you know, how much of this is just a prank. Not even a prank, because it's not. It's rebelling.
Well, it's you could say it's conceptual art,
right?
Right. Like there's a realm where these artists who are working within the quote unquote art world are doing conceptual stuff instead, like whereas art previously was a painting or a sculpture or something that you expect, and now, you know, these surrealists are starting to do crazier, like progressively crazier and crazier things, and then you get into absurdism and Dadaism and people, you know, writing a play that no single line makes sense in the whole play,
right? And
it doesn't matter to them whether the actors say the line they wrote or just talk gibberish or start singing or slapping themselves. They don't care, because it's not about the thing. It's about the ideas behind the presentation of the thing that they're working with.
And you could take that a step further into like cut up work, which I would think we were going to do some talk about that in the music episode, but we forgot. But yeah, doing cut up work with audio and both the written word. You know, these are ways. I mean, but now I'm just thinking about it in terms of a comedy, because it's the juxtaposition of what they're presenting as something serious. I just wonder how much of that is just, you know, like when you have comedians, like they're artists, comedians, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we're getting kind of into a wider randomness in art philosophical territory. But as far as, you know, comedy per se, one of the first, thing that we've talked about before, and one of the first thing that comes to mind for me is improv suggestions.
Sure.
You go to an improv show, the people say, give me a location, and somebody in the audience shouts out France, and then they say, give me a profession, and somebody shouts out dentist. Okay, so now we're doing a scene where I'm a dentist, and you're the patient, and we're French. Right. You know, but that's not necessarily, I don't consider that per se random, you know, because it's something someone thought of. The improv artists are doing that to demonstrate that they didn't prepare ahead of time.
Right.
It's not about the randomness angle. It's about, because you've given these things on the fly that we didn't know what you were going to say, that demonstrates that we're extemporizing and didn't pre-plan something.
Right, which is, so now that's the opposite. So now this is an example where the comedian is presented with something random that they have to incorporate and build into a sketch or song or whatever they're doing. And I think that's absolutely random.
So it seems random to them. It's not random on both sides.
There's no control. There's absolutely no control.
They don't have They don't have any agency over what the people are going to say.
Right. And then I found some that were like the same thing, but with dice. So the dice would have suggestions on them, and including a dice that was like yes, no, yes, and no, and. I thought that was pretty clever. But all of these are improv school was originally to help people just be better actors or comedians. It wasn't intended to be its own art form, but it is completely devolved. I didn't mean to say devolved, but has evolved into its own standard thread.
Yeah. Well, I think my resistance to that whole like improv is random is more like musical improvisation. Because it's based on your knowledge of music theory and scales and chords, and by and large, unless you're Ornette Coleman or Eric Dolphy or something, if you're improvising, you're still working with chords and keys and playing notes that make sense in that context, right? But in the improv comedy sense, I think we're more approaching randomness with that idea that the people in the crowd, nobody could predict who would have been there in the crowd in the first place, or what they would have thought of, who said it loudest, what the that I will exceed is a form of randomness.
Well, let me throw a different angle at you then. So, the music theory and that whole part of music, if that was to be placed in parallel with comedy, it would be English.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think English is a higher order of abstraction because in comedy you do have tropes. You have, if somebody shouts out France and dentist, we're not going to be in dental school or at a dentist convention. I'm going to be the dentist, you're going to be the patient. That's like a common trope that will generate comedy. They have these kind of like there's kind of safety rails on it because they've done this so many times. They've been to improv classes, they've done workshops, they've done so many different things that they kind of have this repertoire the same way a musician has a repertoire of melodies and phrases and hooks that they will use in their improv, their jam or whatever. The comedians have this whole repertoire of ideas and things they know are funny and situations they know are funny that the exact characters and the exact lines they say may be different, but they do fit the common tropes that comedians know.
But the difficulty of the exercise is to, through music and language, to convey an emotion. And I think the difficulty of that is what makes those things good.
Cool.
I thought it was, I don't know.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not saying I don't like improv comedy.
Right.
I think improv comedy can be a lot of fun. I just think that it's not the body of musical knowledge that a musician has is not equivalent to that the comedians speak English.
Okay.
It's that the comedians have a repertoire of comedic situations they've been in and seen and can reproduce. So
that's fair. That's fair. I think the point is to not do that in both of those situations, but yes.
Right. I mean, like I mentioned Ornette Coleman, who came up with harmolodics, which just means wiggle your fingers and play whatever damn notes come out of your horn and don't care about it. He's not caring about key signatures and known hooks or anything. But, a blues player who's doing a guitar solo, he's going to play a solo that's never been played before, but it's going to be using phrases and intervals and things that are known.
I think it depends on the quality. I think quality is the key element there to whether jazz is going to go on an exploration trying to find some place they've never been before. The blues guitarist is going to play tried and true, boring ass shit.
Well, it depends. Like jazz is too big of a word to like pin down.
You know what I'm saying, though. Like there's a difference. I think those are two very different types of improvisational because the blues one is going to be the same chords, the same repeated thing. It's going to be the same phrases, just in a different order. Whereas with freeform expression music, that's not necessarily the case. It depends on the journey of the.
It's a spectrum too. It's a scale between I'm playing, Ain't Misbehavin', and I'm going to throw in a few accidentals when I play the melody during the solo, versus I'm Sun Ra and I'm going to ignore the changes completely and just go crazy with.
We're going
with
to play that
notes.
sunset.
Right. Yeah. And that is, I would say, I would agree with you that is more akin to randomness.
Yes.
Than, playing Ain't Misbehavin' with a few accidentals.
But then, like, the one of the examples that came up when I was doing the research on this was random joke selection. So you write a bunch of jokes, but instead of having a set list, you use some kind of a random variable to pick which order the jokes end up in. That's not random at all.
I mean, it is technically random, but not giving the appearance of randomness. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's wild. Well, we should move on from improv because I got a lot of topics. You said you said you kind of hit a dead end with this, and you thought that maybe I was right that this wasn't a topic that was worth delving into. However, when I started looking, I found a ton, and I was like, "Oh man, Damon was right. This is a great topic." So anyhow, this is not anything, I don't think, but one thing that came up when I was searching for randomness in comedy was there was a sketch comedy show on the Disney Channel in like 2011 and 2012 called So Random. But I'm pretty sure that title was more a reference to like the common catchphrase of like, that's so random, which doesn't have anything to do with technical randomness the way we're talking about it.
And that's what I kept coming into as well, is it was the use of the word random was always didn't occur to you, not generated by some third party.
Yeah.
You know,
I think there's room for both in the concept of comedy randomness, but it definitely, I would lean more towards wanting it to be randomly generated than only, hey, this is something you never thought of before. What if we put, what if we have a goat being the dentist this time? Random.
Well, and see, the one of the things I was going to talk about, or I am talking about now, I guess, is that the idea of the joke with no middle.
Tell me about the joke with no middle.
So a good example that would be The Aristocrats.
It has a really, really, really long middle.
Right. So that's the point, is you have a setup that's pretty normal. You have a whole free-form jazz odyssey in the middle. And then at the end, there's a very abrupt, stupid punchline.
Yeah. Well, this is called a shaggy dog story. The technical name for that type of joke is shaggy dog story.
Gotcha.
And kind of the point of that, this is kind of, I think, getting back to your topic of like, what's the difference between comedy and surrealism? Because the shaggy dog story is the idea of leading you on this long, rambling story, expecting a payoff, and the payoff being basically just a stupid pun or a non sequitur or something like that.
Right.
Like you think this is a joke, and you're waiting around while I tell this really long, convoluted thing, and then boom, it wasn't worth it at the end. You know.
So like the Norm Macdonald version of this, which is my favorite, is that he goes, a moth walks into a podiatrist's office. First of all, we've already hit an abstract. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? So then he begins to have the moth discuss with the podiatrist his deep anguished life.
Wait a second. Are you summarizing a shaggy dog story right now?
Well, I'm telling you, yes.
Shaggy dog stories shouldn't be summarized.
Well, right, no, but so then at the end,
but you're totally violating the whole spirit behind a shaggy dog story if you're just going to tell what the setup is.
Well, I'm using it as an example. Otherwise, people won't know necessarily what we're talking about. This is not a very common.
I need to give this up, but I have very strong opinions about the sanctity.
It says you're a magician.
The sanctity of shaggy dog stories. I feel it is improper to summarize a shaggy dog story. If you're going to tell it, you got to tell it. You're not Norm Macdonald. You shouldn't tell it the way he tells it. If you want to summarize, go for it. I just kind of protest.
So it goes through this whole thing about how his wife and family and everything is all terrible, and it goes at length. And at the end, the podiatrist says, well, you should definitely speak to a psychotherapist or a psychologist or somebody who's more akin. But first of all, you're a moth. Second of all, I'm a foot doctor. So what brought you in here today? And the moth says, oh, well, the light was on.
In the Norm Macdonald version, the moth walks into a hardware store.
I've never heard that version of the Norm Macdonald.
Well, he probably told that story multiple times, and it's different every time because it's a shaggy dog story, and you just kind of improv in the middle because you know the beginning and the end, right? But, the version I heard, moth walks into a hardware store.
Oh, okay.
And the guy behind the counter is like, well, that's a real tough problem, guy, but I'm a hardware store. Like, why did you come in here? Like, that makes it weirder. Instead of like a podiatrist.
Well, I think he probably just pulled that out of his ass.
Probably.
I mean, so anyway,
who knows why Norm Macdonald did what he did, but we love him.
Yeah. But that was what inspired the randomness in comedy because I thought that was very random.
Oh, the Norm Macdonald's moth story is specifically what made you want to do this topic?
It's what I was thinking of.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I still think you were wrong to summarize. I think shaggy dog stories are either told or like it's a mystery school to me.
I don't think so.
Well, we're gonna have
because it's about the journey.
We're gonna and you deprived our listeners of the journey. You just told them the setup. There's some stuff in the middle, and then you gave the punchline. You deprived them
what about
of the journey.
The documentary The Aristocrats? They tell that same Shaggy Dog story joke. 50, 60 different comedians tell it. It's completely different and funny every single time.
They tell it, though. They don't summarize it.
Oh,
they tell it. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, the classic example being The Aristocrats, which there's a documentary co-produced by Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller, which is excellent. I recommend that. You should check it out. But yeah, it tells you all about that particular joke, particular Shaggy Dog story, The Aristocrats. I'm not trying to start a fight with you. I'm just,
I know.
It creates more drama for the show.
Yeah.
But I did for a long time want to start a Shaggy Dog society where people would like, the price of admission, of course, is you have to tell a Shaggy Dog story.
Like Fight Club.
Like Fight Club, but with long, rambling, nonsensical jokes. This might explain why the idea never caught on and I never ended up starting my society.
Right.
Anyhow, another thing that I found was this game show hosted by David Alan Grier called Random Acts of Comedy. That was way back in the day, 1999 it premiered.
But then when I read the description of it, it didn't seem funny at all.
No, because it was like the improv artists do a scene with like a who, a what, and a where, like a location, an identity, and what's going on, and then the contestants have to guess.
Right, it was like reverse improv.
Right, reverse improv, exactly. Which is not random at all. We reject that.
Yeah.
But was there anything else you found besides Shaggy Dog stories?
Well, I mean, no, that was part of it. And then, like, you have things like, I've seen different, Impractical Jokers have like a Wheel of Doom.
Oh, nice.
Where the punishment, there's like a spinning roulette wheel, and then it's got all these different punishments on it. And then there's like, every Joker gives you $20 too. So like, or you just win.
But are there also things that you have to then do like a
there's like 3 things on there that are cop-outs, like you get out, you win something.
But otherwise it's something crazy you have to go do in public.
Get your nipples pierced.
Oh, okay.
Or shave your head and your eyebrows off, and then go get a new driver's license.
That is great. I heartily approve of that. That is a great example of randomness because it's actual randomness. It is in comedy. That might be the gold medalist right there.
Yeah.
Because I was going to talk about the neo-futurists.
Okay.
You ever heard of them? Mm-mm. There's this group in Chicago.
In the Matrix?
I'm not sure if they're still neo-futurists in the Matrix. I'm not sure if they're still operating, but when I was living in Chicago and I think they've been around for a decade or so, there was a group called the Neo-Futurists that had a long-running show called Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind.
Okay.
And the first instance of randomness is that when you walk in the door, they hand you a 6-sider and you roll, and it's like, I think they add like 10 or 15, or like it's the price of admission is base price plus what you rolled.
Nice.
And so your admission fee is already random, like variable. Cool. And then you come in, and there's a stage, and it's not in the round, but it's like the seating is on 3 sides of the stage, so it's kind of like a semicircle. And then they have this stage, and there's a clothesline hanging across in center stage, like all the way across from left to right. And then there are little cards hanging with clothespins on the line that have words or titles on them. And so what they do is they tell the audience to shout out one of the things that they see, and the audience will shout, and they say, like, as is standard with improv, they decide whatever, like who was loudest or what I heard first or whatever, but then they will grab that one off the line, and that is the title of a skit that they do.
Okay.
Now, the skits themselves are not improv. They're pre-written and rehearsed comedy skits, but the order is completely randomized because they do it by what the audience shouts out. So there's not a program order to the sketches, and it's audience determined. The other cool thing that they do is there's a set time limit, and they have they don't know exactly how long each scene is going to work, but they usually have it set up so that they have enough time to do almost all of the sketches. And then at the end time, there's like a buzzer or an alarm or something that goes off. And even if they're in the middle of a sketch, they stop, they take a bow, they say that's the end of the show. And whatever is still hanging up on the line, those skits get retired. They take them off and throw them away. And so if there's a new one that hasn't been done yet, that one never gets done.
Yeah. Oh, so the sketches are retired, even
The
if they were
sketches
never
that
done.
don't, yeah, even if they were never ever, it was a new one.
Oh, that sucks.
They get retired. But the whole cast are also the writers, so
Sure.
they write the sketches and stuff. And every show they retire some, and so they keep so you could go see the show, and then like your friends are visiting from out of town, you go to the show 3 months later, it's almost entirely a different show
because it's been recycled.
Yeah, it's
Or
so
not
it's always
recycled.
changing. It's very changeable, and there is explicit randomness in it because of the admission fee, and then the way they select the order of the pieces as well as the pieces that they retire.
You know what else I just thought of too? The way that Family Guy's written.
Because of the way that South Park lampooned Family Guy. It's not actually the way
But if that was
South
true,
Park or Family Guy is written.
if that was true, it would be a perfect example.
It will be. For those who don't know, South Park did a diss on Family Guy by suggesting that Family Guy is written by a tank full of manatees, and the manatees have beach balls that have words written on them. And whichever beach ball the manatees pop up with their nose, that's what gets into the show.
Yep.
And that's how according to South Park, that's how every episode of Family Guy is written. So if that existed, it certainly would be randomness in comedy. I did a venture a while back that I called Haphazard Theater, which wasn't specifically intended to be comedy, but we did the random generation live during the show. Like people had slips of paper in their pockets with lines on them. We all had dice, and there were times that we would roll for what to do. Like we had this basically like framework of what we knew could happen, but it was like all randomly generated on the fly as we did it. Sometimes it was more surrealism than comedy, but I did comment cards. Usually when I used to do performances, I would give the audience opportunity to give feedback. And one of the comment cards I got said it was better than Tim and Eric. So maybe that was random comedy. I don't know.
See, yeah, and Eric Andre is somebody that kept popping up in my search when I was researching this, and I don't think there's anything random about that guy. He just does crazy shit.
Right.
Or like Jackass. There's nothing random about that. They conspire to do crazy shit, but there's no element. So I think it's just the misuse of the word random was what I was finding mostly in my searches, and I was actually expecting to find more, but it turns out that comedy's not really very. I mean, if you want to talk about something that is heavily, practiced and manicured and refined and gone over, it's comedy. There's not.
Well, there I will beg to differ with you on two items on my list. I'm getting near the end of my list, but two more items on my list that use randomness explicitly to make comedy.
Okay.
And they're both webcomics. Have you heard of, you've heard of Cyanide and Happiness because we've talked about it on the show before.
Yep.
Cyanide and Happiness has a random comic generator where there will be 3 panels, and they have a database. I don't know how many, but they have a database of all these comic panels, and then they randomly choose 3 panels for the comic. And I'm pretty sure they have
I wonder which one came first, because Penny Arcade also does that.
Well, the Oatmeal also does it, which is what I was going to talk about next. But yeah, so the Cyanide and Happiness one is hard to say. Explosm.net. It's explosm.net/RCG, and RCG stands for Random Comic Generator. So Cyanide and Happiness has a random comic generator. The Oatmeal, Matthew Inman, you know him? You know the Oatmeal?
I'm familiar with it.
Exploding Kittens is a game that he designed or co-designed with his art. And he has a random comic generator called Horrible Therapist. Because all the frames depict a therapy session, but very crazy and insane things ensue. But you can just reload that and get a new one each time, and it just randomly chooses the squares. So tell me about this Penny Arcade one.
Same thing.
Oh, I wanted to give the URL. Theoatmeal.com/therapist is that one.
Penny Arcade, I wasn't going to talk about, but yeah, Penny Arcade is another very old webcomic. That they did the same thing. Their comics are always 3 panels, right? So there's the introduction, the exploration, the reveal. Every single comic is that pattern. And so then when you use the random juxtaposer, it doesn't. I think they're pre-sorted into the first, second, third So there's a pile of first, a pile of second, a pile of
There's
third.
a setup, a thing that happens, and then an ending.
Exactly.
I think the actually, I'm not. I don't think Cyanide and Happiness is that way. I think theirs are all completely random, but I think the Oatmeal, the Horrible Therapist one, is that way as well.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I just seemed like that's what the case was. That was a pattern that I observed when I did it a couple times. But
yeah, I'm not sure Penny Arcade still has the random feature because I'm seeing some comments on their discussion board saying, "Where's random comic? I can't find it."
Oh,
so they might not have that anymore.
It's
Please
just
feel
about
free
a month
to
ago I
search
found it.
around.
Yeah, it's right here. So they have two. So if you pull up any strip,
No, the random comic button just gives you a random comic strip that they've created.
go and then
It doesn't
look,
randomize the individual panels.
correct. Look right underneath that comic remix.
Generate comic. So there you go.
Roll the dice and we'll give you 3 random panels chosen from over 26 years of comics.
Okay. I see a lock on the
Yeah,
final. Oh, because you can
you can lock one.
one of the either Cyanide and Happiness or the Oatmeal has that feature where you can lock like if you like one of the panels but you want to see what else random can go with it, you can lock one of them in place and randomize the other ones.
Says at the top, one of a possible 46,036,669,950 remixes.
And they obviously did the math on that. Cool. Yeah, so you can go to Penny Arcade. We'll put this one's long, so we can just put it in the show notes. Well, it's not that long.
They just go to pennyarcade.com.
It's penny-arcade.com,
Okay.
first of all, and then /archive/remix.
Right, but if you go to any comic, it's right there.
Yeah, underneath the random button, there's a generate comic button. But yeah, if you go to that URL I stated, it will get there as well. So there you have it, random webcomics that are actually random.
That's really cool, actually. So I wonder if that. Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be. Like I said, panel 1s are mixed, panel 2s are mixed, panel 3s are mixed.
Yeah. And it seems like that's from their existing comics. They've just like cut them up and say you can like just throw them all together, see what happens. Sometimes you get funny, sometimes you get weird. Who knows? It's a gamble.
Yep.
Like anything random.
Well,
You got anything else on your list?
No. I think I blurted most of it.
Cool. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention, and I don't think it really qualifies it as random, but it kind of popped into my mind when I was thinking about this topic. Are you familiar with the 90s internet craze, Benny Lava?
No.
So this person, what was his name? Buffalax. There was a YouTube channel called Buffalax, or a creator called Buffalax, that took a Bollywood song and dance number from a Bollywood movie and then put subtitles, because they're singing in Hindi, and he put the subtitles of what it sounded like to him in English. And they say nonsensical things like, "My loony bun is fine, Benny Lava."
Nice.
Or, "Have you been high today? Look at this goat I ate."
It's
He
like-
basically just listen, it's misheard lyrics, but from a different language. So he hears the Hindi, and then he like decides what like that could sound like as an English, like they're not all very close, but he just puts the subtitle there so that you kind of hear it as you're looking at the
That's
subtitle.
funny.
And they're so just nonsensical and weird. That's where the comedy comes from.
Right.
So it's, again, a pseudo-random where it's just like, this foreign phrase sounds to me like it's this phrase in English that doesn't make sense.
Or actually, that makes me think of bad lip reading.
Bad lip reading would be another example of that, yes. Excellent. We should put both of those in the show notes.
Yep.
Because those are, again, straddling the line of randomness, but in the ballpark.
Well, in terms of randomness,
I got my wish. We got more randomness on this show.
yes.
Fortuna decided to stop recording in the middle of that sentence there. So I guess that's all we got then, except for a listener challenge.
Yep.
Yeah. So I want to do that Patreon thing.
Okay.
Call me lame if you must, but hey, I want a better theme song. So roll your 6-sided die. Go to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/youraleatoricreality. And make a pledge. When we get 10 people on there, get up to 10 people on there, I will do that theme song thing with a random quartet. So thanks for listening. Please tell a friend. We got some exciting guests coming up that we can't tell you about yet, but we do need to roll for what happens on the next show.
That's what I was going to say.
In the interest of more randomness, I thought, because normally we've been rolling for a topic or something, I thought of 4 categories that we can do. And they all have sub-roles within them.
Okay.
But one would be a game, another would be a guest, and we can roll for guests because now we have, by the time this comes out, we'll have guests in the can.
Oh, right.
So we could roll for a guest, and if we roll for a guest, then that's when we release the next guest episode in the pipeline.
All right, I like
we
it.
could roll for a random activity, which would quite possibly involve mobile recording, which I'm keen to test out.
Sure.
We could do a random dice walk. We could play Morton's List. There's lots of things that we could do as a random activity in the world. And then, of course, a topic show. But that would cut, because it's all been mostly topic shows, that would give, less airtime to what I consider the least random thing that we do is just talk about a topic for the whole time.
For sure.
Cool. So do you want to skew the odds on any of those, or do you just want to roll a 4-sider?
Got a 4-sider in hand.
All right, then we'll do them in that order. Give it a roll.
2.
2 is guest.
All right.
Which is great. So the next episode, we can announce that we will be interviewing.
No, we have to roll for it.
We have an order. We have a pipeline order, but you are right that the spirit of the show dictates that we roll for, even though we have multiple guest episodes in the can, we have to roll for which one to release.
So let's say...
So D2. We have 2 ready to go.
D3. D3 is the third option being other.
Okay.
Where's the fucking...
D3. So 1 is the one that starts with N, and 2 is the one that starts with A, and 3 is other.
Yep.
All right.
I like it. If I could just find... Oh, there it is. Ready?
I'm ready.
Scissors.
Which is what number?
3.
3, which is other, which means we can't start releasing episodes until we have a third guest interview in the can. Hail Fortuna.
It happened.
That is what Fortuna has dictated. Thanks for listening. Keep in touch. Your aleatoricreality@gmail.com.
Your aleatoric reality.